Hello students, already we have discussed regarding acute diarrheal diseases. So one among them is cholera. So let us study about cholera. So cholera, as you all know, it is an acute diarrheal disease which is caused by V. cholerae. So we can tell it as it is cholera. It is an acute diarrheal disease which is caused by Vibrio cholerae. V. cholerae means Vibrio cholerae. It is of serotype 01. Like we can tell it as it is of O group 1. We can call it as Vibrio cholerae O group 1 strain, because there are many strains which can cause diarrheal diseases like cholera. So especially it has two more strains, like we use it to call it as classical or EI-TOR. So classical or EI-TOR, these two are also most famous strains which can cause cholera. It is commonly due to EI-TOR biotype, especially in India. So especially in India nowadays, Vibrio cholerae along with that EI-TOR biotype also causes cholera attacks. So cholera, as we all know, it is characterized by sudden onset of profuse watery diarrhea. There will be watery diarrhea where the stools will be looking like rice water, and there will be profuse diarrhea, and without any effortless diarrhea will be there, and it will be continued with vomiting, and even rapid dehydration will be there for the patient, those who are having severe cholera, and even muscle cramps will be there, and even there will be a sudden reduction or the suppression in urine. So these are the main symptoms which we can identify in cholera, which helps us to identify the diarrhea, how it is. The main thing what we can do is the only way of treatment is a rapid replacement of fluids and electrolytes. So how the fluid is losing from the body, the same way the fluid should be replaced, and even the electrolyte also. So let us see in detail about the epidemiological features of cholera. So when we look into the epidemiological features, we can see that the agent is Vibrio cholerae O group 1. Otherwise we can tell Vibrio cholerae 01. So it is especially known as the epidemic strain. Nowadays, as I have told, cholera can be even caused by classical and EI-TOR vibros also. So there are again divided into three serological types, that is Inaba, Ogawa and Hikojima. So especially in India, under this EI-TOR vibes, especially this Ogawa serotype usually causes cholera in India. So I hope you all are following me along with textbook. It is there in KPARK textbook. All these disease conditions are there. We teachers can just trust you students only. So I hope when the class is coming, you have to sit along with the KPARK textbook and with a pencil. I am not strictly telling you to write the notes, because I am believing you that you all are following me along with KPARK textbook. So put the date near to cholera and acute diarrheal disease, and you have to follow the classes. So that everything is in detail, even given in textbook also, because once you read the textbook, it will give you much more informations. So in India, as I have told, Ogawa serotype is especially causing cholera nowadays. Then when we tell about the resistant capacity of Vibrio cholerae, we can see that they can be killed within 30 minutes by heating up to 56 degrees Celsius. That means if we are boiling the water, and if especially the Vibrio cholerae will be killed. So just 30 minutes of heating is more than enough, or just a few seconds of boiling. So if we boil the water, then of course the Vibrio cholerae will not exist in the water. That's why we always tell that wherever there is chance of cholera, we have to boil the water and drinks, because even contamination can happen through the water also. But these strains can remain in ice for around 4 to 6 weeks. That means cold climate or in ice, they can survive for 4 to 6 weeks. even the dry conditions or even sunlight can kill them in few hours. So you can just imagine how much effective the drying or the sunshine really gives in the treatment of cholera. That's why we used to tell the person has to dry even their dress or the utensils, whatever water contaminated things, they have to dry in the sunlight so that the strains will be killed in that. Then human being is the only known reservoir. Human being is the only known reservoir, and even he may can be a case or a carrier also. So even in carrier also, we can tell that carriers are usually very temporary, and very rarely we can see it as a chronic case. So in very rare cases carriers will be there. Of course the carriers will be usually those who are living along with the person who is affected. Otherwise in the particular prone area, those who are living in the prone area only, those can be the carriers also. And the stool and vomitus is a source of infection. So here we can see the infective material is the stool of the person who is infected with cholera. Otherwise even sometimes the vomitus also can be infective material. So both in the cases of case and even in the carrier. So when we tell about the infective dose, we can tell that the cholera is highly dose related. So how much vibrios, how much number of vibrios has entered into the person, so how much is the infectivity, depends upon the strength of the vibrios that has been existing in the particular person. Even the period of communicability, if we can tell, in the case of cholera we can tell around 7 to 10 days of it can be infectious. 7 to 10 days it can be infectious, and in carriers it can be infectious to 2 to 3 weeks even. So even a carrier can even be infectious to others for 2 to 3 weeks. So these all things are clearly given in textbook. You have to follow the textbook along with me. So now let us see regarding some of the host factors. So when we look into the host factors, we can see that it affects all the age groups and even all genders. So there is no gender discrimination or age discrimination here. So everybody can get affected, and all the male, female, everybody can get affected because of cholera. In endemic areas, especially the children are more affected. So once the outbreak of cholera comes, we have to be very careful about the children, because we all know that they are immunologically weak, and even when they are having loose stools, of course they will show anorexia, they will not eat or they will not drink water properly. So of course they will be landing up in dehydration, and which can lead to the loss of fluid and electrolyte, and even death can also occur for children. Then the host factors tells that the travel or the movement of the population, when the people travel from one places to another, they changes the water. So those who are traveling a lot, they will have a high risk of this cholera infection. And of course low socio-economical class people or poor hygiene, those who are maintaining poor personal hygiene, those who never maintain water hygiene, wherever the excreta get mixed up with water, wherever there is a poor sanitary facilities. So these are some of the host factors which we can tell. So the natural infection gives effective intestinal immunity, because the vaccination, the capacity of vaccination is very poor and temporary in case of cholera. Only 3 to 6 months there will be immunity through the vaccination. But if a person gets a cholera, of course this natural infection can give them an effective intestinal immunity, so that further attack they will not have such type of severe diarrheas. So let us see the environmental factors. So when we look into the environmental factors, we can see that of course, as I have told, the contaminated water and the food, that is the main source. So the contaminated water, especially the water where it is mixed up with the feces or the stool, and even the food material also, when the flies, when the people follow open air defecation. So when there is open air defecation, of course the flies will sit on the stool and they will come and sit on the food materials. So like that also it can get contaminated. So this is all about the environmental factors. Then when we look into the mode of transmission, as I have told, the person to person transmission can occur through fecally contaminated water and contaminated food, and even direct contact through the contaminated fingers. So if you are not washing the hands properly after defecation, especially children. So during the toilet training, we have to teach the children how to wash their hands. That's why always we used to emphasize that after toilet hygiene, you have to, it's a part of toilet hygiene that you have to wash the hand with soap and water after toileting. And even contaminated fingers, which is in contact with the omiters, these are all the mode of transmission. Then incubation period is only few hours, up to 5 days we can tell, otherwise few hours to 5 days, otherwise 1 to 2 days usually the incubation period is. So when we look into the clinical features, as I have told, you all know that there will be frequent watery and effortless loose stools. That's why I have told all the things have a high similarity towards the acute diarrheal diseases. We have just studied about the acute diarrheal diseases. Even in cholera also the same things. This is just caused because of Vibrio cholerae. The causative agent is different, that's it. Otherwise acute diarrheal disease means it can be either because of bacteria, fungal, bacterial or parasitic. Any of the infection can cause all this. Even cholera is also one among the acute diarrheal infections. So here the stool will be having a rice water appearance അല്ലേ. നമ്മൾ പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഒരു കഞ്ഞിവെള്ളം പോലെ അത്രയും ലൈറ്റായിട്ട് വാട്ടറി ആയിട്ട് ഒരു കഞ്ഞിവെള്ളത്തിൻ്റെ ലുക്കായിരിക്കും അവരുടെ കോളറ ഉള്ളവരുടെ സ്റ്റൂൾസിൻ്റെ അപ്പിയറൻസ്. സോ വെൻ വി ടെൽ അബൌട്ട് ദ സിവിയറിറ്റി ഓഫ് കോളറ, വി ക്യാൻ ടെൽ it depends upon the rapidity and duration of the fluid loss, how long how much the people are having fluid loss from their body. So there are of 3 stages: stage of evacuation, stage of collapse and stage of recovery. Stage of evacuation means when the patient or the person is having this frequent diarrhea or vomiting, or when they are having this profuse diarrhea. During this painless watery diarrhea episode, they have to get admitted towards the hospital, or they have to replace their fluid. So this is a stage of evacuation. Then stage of collapse means when the patient soon passes into the stage of collapse because of diarrhea. That means the patient will be showing sunken eyes, they will be having hollow cheeks, and abdominal cramps will be there. There will be subnormal temperature and all the symptoms. Even sometimes the pulse, there will be very weak pulse, or even sometimes absence of pulse can be there. Then unrecordable BP, the BP will fall down. There will be very low blood pressure, and the loss of skin elasticity, the skin elasticity will be lost, and there will be very shallow respiration. So these type of symptoms, when it occurs, it really tells that the patient is going towards dehydration, and even death can also occur. So this is the stage of collapse. The last one is the stage of recovery, whether the patient begins to show the clinical improvement cases. That means the BP will come up and the temperature will return back to the normal, and there will be normal urine output also. So in this condition the patient is recovering. So we can divide the severity of cholera in these 3 stages. It is also very clearly given in textbook. You have to read once in textbook also. So let us see about the laboratory diagnosis. So in the laboratory diagnosis of cholera, the main thing is we have to examine the stool. So while examining the stool, we have to look for the Vibrio cholerae strains or the other strains which can cause the cholera. So stool examination, and very rarely we focus on vomitous examination. Otherwise water samples we used to take. So wherever cholera prone areas, from such area, from the well or from the public water source, from these areas, the health workers, they used to come and they used to collect the water samples and they examine for the Vibrio cholerae strains. There is any chance of outbreak of cholera, and even a culture also can be done for the stool for the further examinations, and in order to know the strength or the how much amount of strains are present. Then even biochemical tests like serological examination, blood examinations can also be done for identifying cholera. So these all are the various laboratory diagnosis which we can identify cholera. And when we tell about the control of cholera, of course the main thing is we have to, because we are looking it as an endemic or an epidemic. So endemic, so especially in one particular area, if cholera is starting, there is a chance for it to get spread to others very fast, because of course it is because of the contamination of water and food. So the chances is very higher. So the main thing is we have to confirm the outbreak. If there is any outbreak happening in the community, as a community health nurse we have to confirm the outbreak as soon as possible. So of course there should be trained personnel, trained health workers to identify how the cholera look like, because some people just for having a small diarrhea or for having 2-3 times loose stools, they will tell that the word cholera. No, especially I have told diarrhea and cholera is entirely different. Here in cholera the loose stools will be watery stools very frequently, even around more than 30 to 40 times. There will be effortless diarrhea, there will be continuous watery diarrhea, and even the stool will be looking like rice water look, the stool will be looking like. So we have to train the health personnel to identify how the cholera is, and early case detection, and we have to start treatment as early as possible, so that it should not affect the whole community. Then the main thing is assessment of dehydration. Already I have told you in acute diarrheal diseases how to assess the dehydration. Even in KPAR textbook, even the same table is present, you all have to go through the table. So in the assessment of dehydration, as I have told, we have to assess the patient appearance, how the patient looks like, whether the patient is alert, whether the patient is cold, calm, whether the patient is thirsty. We have to look for the patient appearance. We have to see for the pulse, whether it is rapid pulse or weak pulse. We have to look for the blood pressure, whether it is less than normal or whether it is normal. We have to see for the skin elasticity, and then we have to see the tongue, whether it is a dry tongue or moist tongue. All these things, even a urine output we have to see. And in case of small children, we have to look for the anterior fondonale, as I have told. Neruga അല്ലേ, ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞല്ലോ നെറുക. Fondonale means the area where 2-3 skull bones join together. നമുക്കറിയാം കൊച്ചുകുട്ടികളിൽ ഈ ബോൺസ് ഒന്നും കറക്റ്റായിട്ട് ഫ്യൂസ്ഡ് അല്ല ജനിക്കുമ്പോൾ, അല്ലേ? ഒരു ഏകദേശം ഒന്നര മാസം മുതൽ 1.5 വർഷം വരെ എടുക്കും ഈ ഫൊണ്ടോണൽസ് എല്ലാം ക്ലോസ് ആവാനായിട്ട്. മെയിൻലി ദർ ആർ 2 ഫൊണ്ടോണൽസ് ഇൻ ഇൻഫൻസ്, ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് anterior fondonale and posterior fondonale. Posterior fondonale usually it closes by 1.5 month, but anterior fondonale it closes around 1.5 year. So we can see that there will be a sunken region, അല്ലെ, ഒരു നെറുക കുഴിഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്ന അവസ്ഥ. That means the child is going towards dehydration. So these all things we have to through all these things we have to assess the dehydration. Then about the treatment, after assessing the dehydration, especially we have to go for the rehydration therapy. The treatment only is rehydration. So how we can rehydrate the patient? Not only through water, because electrolytes are also lost. So of course we have to give oral rehydration solution, otherwise ORS. The word is very familiar to you, I hope. Otherwise when we go to community posting, we will be സീയിങ് ORS പാക്കറ്റ്, അല്ലേ? നമ്മുടെ എല്ലാം പ്രാഥമിക ആരോഗ്യ കേന്ദ്രങ്ങളിൽ നിന്നും ORSൻ്റെ പാക്കറ്റ് കിട്ടും. നമുക്ക് ഡയറിയാണ്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇതുപോലുള്ള ലൂസ് സ്റ്റൂൾസ്, കണ്ടിന്യൂസ് വോമിറ്റിംഗ് ഒക്കെ ഉള്ളപ്പോൾ ഇൻ ഓർഡർ ടു റീപ്ലേസ് ദ ഇലക്ട്രോലൈറ്റ്സ് ദേ യൂസ് ടു ഗീവ് ദ ORS പാക്കറ്റ്. സോ ഇൻ ദ ടെക്സ്റ്റ് ബുക്ക് ദ കമ്പോസിഷൻ ഓഫ് ORS പാക്കറ്റ് ഈസ് ക്ലിയർലി ഗിവൻ. I have not added into the slides. Why? Because I want you all people to open the textbook and look into the composition of ORS. In that they have clearly given what is the bicarbonate ORS composition and what is the citrate ORS composition. So there are 2 types of ORS, and clearly the composition has been given in the textbook. You all have to go through, because as a Viva point of view, even in Viva they used to ask what is the composition of oral rehydration solution, ORS. Then if the patient is not able to drink it, even in the textbook it is clearly given the guidelines how much the person should take the solution. Even for a child, how much. If the patient is under 5 children, then of course 200 to 400 ml only can be orally administered at a time. And if the children is 4 to 11 months, then 400 to 600 ml can be given ORS. And if it is 1 to 2 years, 600 to 800 ml can be given, like that. So if it is more than 15 years, if the person is more than 15 years, then of course we can give around 2200 to 4000 ml we can give. So just think about the patient is not able to drink it orally, then of course we have to go for the IV rehydration, alle. നമ്മൾ ഐ വി തെറാപ്പി കൊടുത്തേ പറ്റുള്ളൂ ആ കണ്ടീഷനിൽ. സോ ഐ വി റീഹൈഡ്രേഷൻ ഹൗ വി ക്യാൻ ഗീവ് എസ്പെഷ്യലി ഓഫ് ബിക്കോസ് ഓഫ് ത്രീ തിങ്സ് വി ക്യാൻ യൂസ് ഐദർ റിങ്ങർ ലാക്റ്റേറ്റ് ഉപയോഗിക്കാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പോളി ഇലക്ട്രോലൈറ്റ് സൊല്യൂഷൻസ് ബിക്കോസ് ദ ഇലക്ട്രോലൈറ്റ്സ് ഈസ് ഗെറ്റിംഗ് ലോസ് ഫ്രം ദ ബോഡി. സോ ഓഫ് കോഴ്സ് വാട്ട് ഈസ് പോളി ഇലക്ട്രോലൈറ്റ് സൊല്യൂഷൻ എന്ന് പറയുമ്പം ദാറ്റ് മീൻസ് ദർ വിൽ ബി ദ കണ്ടൻറ്റ് ലൈക്ക് സോഡിയം ക്ലോറൈഡ്, sodium acetate, potassium chloride, glucose, everything will have a mixture in 1 liter. So that can be given for rehydration. Otherwise, if ringer lactate and polyelectrolytes are not there, then of course normal saline also can be given as a part of IV rehydration. So either we can give orally ORS, otherwise IV rehydration is needed in case of severe vomiting, or if the person is not able to take oral hydration. Then once the electrolyte is maintained in the body, once the fluid imbalance has been balanced in the body, then they can start up with the maintenance therapy. So even in maintenance therapy, when we look into the tabular column in the textbook, even in the there are so many columns given or tables given, table number 5, 6, 7, 8 like that. So all these tables you can look, so that very clearly you will be able to identify how the therapy goes on. So in the maintenance therapy, very clearly they have told that in mild case of diarrhea, around 100 ml per kg body weight, we have to give the oral fluid as a part of the maintenance therapy. Then in case of severe diarrhea, replace the volume what is lost through the stool, and we can able to give around 10 to 15 ml per kg body weight per hour. We can give it orally. So this is about maintenance therapy. So we can maintain the fluid balance. And the other control measures of cholera is one is epidemiological investigation. So of course we have to start with the epidemiological investigation, how the outbreak came, എവിടെയായിരുന്നു ഇതിൻ്റെ സോഴ്സ്, എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഈ ഇൻഫെക്ഷൻ വന്നത്. സോ ഓൾ ദീസ് തിങ്സ് വി ഷുഡ് എംഫസൈസ് ഇൻ epidemiological investigation. We have to find out how the outbreak started. We have to identify the mode of transmission, how it has been spread to others, and especially the affected person in the houses, whether the others are affected. So all this chain of infection we have to investigate. Then sanitation measures should be focused. So in sanitation, as I have told, especially the water control, we have to boil the water. Safe drinking water should be used for cooking and for drinking. And excreta disposal, as I have told, open air defecations are very very rare in Kerala, but still if especially the people those who are living near to the railway station, so such type of people should be more conscious about this, because when there is feces in the open air, of course the flies can come over that and they can come back into your food, so which can lead to cholera. So the excreta disposal is very very important, and food sanitation is very very important. Washing your hands after passing the stools with soap and water, and having food hygiene, especially the rooters. നമ്മൾ കിഴങ്ങ് വർഗ്ഗങ്ങളൊക്കെ കഴിക്കുമ്പോൾ അല്ലേ, നമ്മൾ കപ്പക്കിഴങ്ങ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതുപോലെയുള്ള കൂർക്ക അങ്ങനെയുള്ള കിഴങ്ങ് വർഗ്ഗങ്ങളൊക്കെ കഴിക്കുമ്പോൾ we don't know how much it has come in contact with the feces and the water contamination. So we have to clean it thoroughly, we have to clean it properly, and we have to boil it very clearly, because Vibrio cholerae strains cannot live in boiling water. So boiling can really kill them. So instead of eating the things raw, we have to cook it properly, especially the rooters. So these are some of the, then disinfection, even by disinfecting the things, especially I have told chlorination can be a good one, bleaching powder can be used, and even sunlight is also a very good mode of disinfection. So these are some of the sanitary measures you have to keep in memory. And next is about chemoprophylaxis. So when we, what is chemoprophylaxis? വരാതിരിക്കാനായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ മെഡിസിൻ എടുക്കുന്നു അല്ലേ. അതിനായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ മാസ് ഡ്രഗ് അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേഷൻ്റെ ആവശ്യമില്ല. വാട്ട് ഈസ് MDA? MDA മീൻസ് മാസ് ഡ്രഗ് അഡ്മിനിസ്ട്രേഷൻ. ദാറ്റ് മീൻസ് ഇഫ് ഇങ്ങനെയൊരു ഒരു പ്രശ്നം ഒരു സമൂഹത്തിലുണ്ടാകുമ്പോൾ അവിടെയുള്ള എല്ലാവർക്കും മരുന്ന് കൊടുക്കും നമ്മൾ അല്ലേ. സോ ലൈക്ക് ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ ഇൻ ചിക്കൻ പോക്സ്, ഇഫ് ചിക്കൻ പോക്സ് ഈസ് സ്റ്റാർട്ടിങ്, ഓഫ് കോഴ്സ് the PHC people, they used to give chemoprophylaxis, some medicine they used to give, so that everybody can get this prophylaxis. But in this case of cholera, there is no need of mass drug administration, because it is not much effective. The only treatment or chemotherapy is tetracycline can be taken by the person those who are staying along with, or the people those who are living near to the cholera episodes. ആ വീട്ടിലുള്ളവർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ വീടിന് അടുത്തുള്ളവർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ വാട്ടർ സോഴ്സ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നവരെല്ലാവരും ഒരു പ്രിക്കോഷൻ എന്നുള്ള നിലയ്ക്ക് ടെട്രാസൈക്ലിൻ ക്യാൻ ബി ടേക്കൺ ആസ് എ പാർട്ട് ഓഫ് കീമോപ്രൊഫൈലാക്സിസ്. സോ ക്ലിയർലി ഐ ഹാവ് given 500 milligram 2 times for 3 days. The adult can be taken, and 125 milligram for children, those who are between 4 to 13 years, and those who are less than 3 years, they can take around 50 milligram of tetracycline. So this is about the chemoprophylaxis. And when we look into the vaccination, as I have told, the vaccination gives only very temporary and partial immunity, that is very less, like 3 to 6 months only it gives the vaccination effect. So vaccination against this classical Ogawa is not much effective, but still there is vaccination available against this classical Ogawa and all. So especially the WHO or the World Health Assembly, they recommend that those who travel internationally, those who are flying from one country to another, or those who travel from international travel, those who afford, they can take the cholera vaccination, so that as a precaution can be taken against this cholera. And not but least, we can give health education to the people. It is much more important, because as we all know, prevention is better than cure, because many of these things we all know there is no proper cure or medications or proper vaccinations which is very very effective for lifelong immunity. So only thing is we can prevent it by health educating the people. We have to educate them regarding the feces, regarding the contamination of water and food with the feces, how to maintain the personal hygiene, hand hygiene after toileting, then boiling the water and drinking, especially in the areas where there is prone with cholera. All these things can be emphasized in the health education. So health education is also one of the control measures, as we can tell. So these are all the, even the role of community health nurse also. So she can really do very well awareness about this cholera wherever it is happening. So this is all about cholera. So today you all have to read acute diarrheal diseases and cholera in KPAR textbook, and as I have told, you have to read and understand all the tabular columns which is given in the textbook, where the assessment of dehydration, where the maintenance therapy, and even the oral rehydration therapy, how much should be given for each age group, everything is clearly given in textbook. So you all have to read and understand the textbook also along with my lecture. Thank you, students.